The Galactic Council meeting was held inside a huge silver chamber floating above a red gas giant. Delegates from over 200 alien species sat around a glowing circle, each watching the center where the human ambassador stood. Her name was Captain Lana Moore, and she looked calm, but inside she was struggling to keep her anger in check. Earth must give 3 sectors to the Xthar Empire, said Councillor Rekai, a tall, insect-like alien with cold, shining eyes. They are a senior member of the council. Your refusal threatens the balance of peace. Lana took a deep breath. She was here to speak for all of humanity, and the decision would affect billions of lives. Those sectors hold human colonies, she replied firmly. Men, women, and children live there. You are asking us to give away our own people to the Xthar, who invaded us just 50 years ago. Councillor Rekai waved a thin arm. That war is over. We must move forward. Sacrifice is part of peace. Several other council members nodded in agreement. Others remained silent. Lana looked around the room. Only a few species truly understood humans. Most saw them as newcomers, brave, clever, but too emotional and too unpredictable. After the meeting, Lana returned to the small human embassy on the station. She sat in silence with her second-in-command, Lieutenant Harris, who had served with her during the last Xthar conflict. They really want us to hand over our people like they're nothing, he said, pacing the room. They think peace is more important than justice, Lana replied. But peace built on fear is no peace at all. That night, Lana received a private message from an old contact, Ambassador Vurok, a reptilian diplomat from the neutral planet Kashera. He had always been fair in past talks. Captain Moore, the message said, I believe you are right. To be cautious. I have information you should see. The Xthar may be hiding something. The next morning, Vurok met Lana in a quiet section of the space station. He handed her a small data chip. This shows Xthar agents influencing the Council's decisions. They have been bribing and threatening smaller species to vote in their favor. If this is true, Vurok said softly, your people are being set up. Lana's eyes widened as she read the files. Dozens of messages, transactions, and hidden recordings pointed to a massive conspiracy. The peace talks were a cover. The Xthar wanted control of human space, and they were using the Council to get it. This changes everything, Lana said, voice cold with anger. She returned to the Council the next day and presented the evidence. I demand a full investigation, she declared. This proves the Xthar have been manipulating these talks from the beginning. But Councillor Rekai laughed. This is nonsense, fabricated, human lies. The Council argued for hours. Some members believed Lana, others sided with Rekai. In the end, the Council voted to ignore the evidence. They said it was not enough to stop the peace process. Lana stood up slowly. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the steel in it. If you refuse to protect the truth, then Earth will protect itself. We are withdrawing from the peace talks, effective immediately. The room exploded in noise. Some delegates shouted in protest, others in support. The Council's speaker slammed, his staff on the ground to bring order. You can't walk away, Rekai hissed. Lana turned toward him. You asked us to give up our homes. You ignored proof of corruption. You don't want peace. You want silence. Then she walked out of the chamber. Back on her ship, the HSS Valiant, Lana sent a message to Earth. Her face was broadcast across human space. This is Captain Lana Moore. The Galactic Council has failed us. They tried to trade away our people. They ignored clear signs of betrayal. Humanity will no longer take part in these peace talks. We will stand alone if we must, but we will not bow. The message was met with a mix of shock, pride, and fear. On Earth, protests and debates filled the airwaves. Some said Lana had gone too far. Others called her a hero. In the following days, ships from the Xthar Empire moved closer to human borders. Their intentions were unclear, but the message was loud. They would not let humanity walk away without consequences. In private, Lana met with her officers. They'll come for us, Lieutenant Harris said. Let them, Lana replied. We've faced worse. She looked out the window at the stars, her eyes hard but focused. The Council had made its decision. Now humanity had made its own. And for the first time in years, humans were no longer just part of the galaxy. They were ready to stand apart from it. The days after the announcement were tense. Humanity had made its stand and the entire galaxy was watching. The HSS Valiant, Lana Moore's flagship, was now on full alert. The crew worked non-stop, preparing for the worst while trying to stay hopeful. But even Lana could feel the weight of the situation. Peace talks had been humanity's hope for the future, and now it seemed as if that hope was slipping away. Lana sat in her quarters, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The Xthar fleet was moving closer to human space, and the Galactic Council had already started sending messages of warning. Their official stance was clear. Humanity had made a dangerous mistake, but Lana knew the truth. They were just protecting their own interests. The Council, unwilling to confront the Xthar directly, now needed humanity to bend, but that was not going to happen. "What happens next?" Lieutenant Harris asked, entering her quarters. He was a loyal officer, always by her side, but even he couldn't hide the unease in his voice. He had seen what the Xthar were capable of, and the thought of facing them again was unsettling. Lana sighed, turning toward him. "We prepare." She ran a hand through her hair, frustration building. "The Council thinks we'll fold, but we won't. We'll defend ourselves." Harris raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll listen?" Lana didn't answer right away. She'd been questioning everything since their withdrawal. There had to be a way to convince the Council to see reason. But the more she thought about it, the more it seemed like humanity was on its own. "I don't know," she finally admitted. "But I do know this. We have no choice." As she looked back at the stars outside the ship, Lana's mind raced. How could she make the galaxy understand what was at stake? Earth's very survival might depend on their next move. The Xthar, with their brutal military might, would not stop at human colonies. They had their sights set on much more: galactic dominance. The next day, the Council sent a formal message to Earth. It was a threat, though couched in diplomatic language. They warned that if humanity did not return to the peace talks, it would be seen as an act of war. The message was signed by Councillor Rakai and several other prominent figures, their voices cold and commanding. Lana read the message twice, feeling the weight of each word. The Council wasn't just angry, they were afraid. Humanity's defiance had shaken their confidence. The Xthar had grown bold because they knew the Council was divided. And now, with humanity standing apart, they might just have a chance to push back. "This is our chance," Lana said aloud, more to herself than to anyone in the room. She clenched her fists, a plan forming in her mind. That afternoon, she gathered her senior officers on the bridge. "I want us ready for anything," she said. "We're going to take the fight to the Xthar." Lieutenant Harris looked at her, surprised. "But the Council will see this as an act of war. If we attack the Xthar now, we'll have more enemies than we can handle." Lana nodded, understanding the risk. "I know, but we can't let them attack first. We'll strike their supply lines, disrupt their communications, show them we can defend ourselves." There was a long pause as the officers exchanged looks. Finally, Commander Sato, a seasoned fighter, spoke up. "It's a gamble, but we have no other choice." The plan was set. The HSS Valiant would lead a small fleet of human ships to intercept the Xthar's advance. They would hit hard and fast, taking out key targets before the Xthar had a chance to respond. It wasn't a full-scale assault, just a warning shot. As Lana stood in the command center, she felt a strange mix of fear and determination. For the first time, humanity was not begging for peace. They were fighting for it, and she was leading the charge. The HSS Valiant and its fleet moved quickly through human space, their destination clear. The Xthar fleet was still several jumps away, but their sensors had already picked up the human ships. Lana knew that once they entered Xthar-controlled space, there would be no turning back. "Are we ready?" Lana asked, her voice steady. "Ready," Harris confirmed, his voice cool but tense. "All systems are go." Lana nodded. "Then let's show them we're not backing down." The fleet jumped into Xthar space, a vast, dark stretch of stars. Immediately, the communications channels were filled with the usual threats and demands for humanity to return to the peace talks. But this time, Lana didn't respond. The time for diplomacy had passed. Within moments, the first Xthar ships came into view. Massive, hulking vessels, their gun turrets gleaming with deadly intent. Lana's heart raced, but her mind remained sharp. The plan was simple. Strike quickly, hit the supply ships first, then pull back before the main fleet could react. Targets locked, Commander Sato announced, his voice calm as always. Firing. In 3, 2, 1. The HSS Valiant and its fleet unleashed a barrage of laser fire, striking the Xthar supply ships before they even had a chance to return fire. The first explosion was massive, the shockwave sending smaller debris spinning through space. The Xthar ships attempted to retaliate, but they were too slow to react. "We've hit them hard," Harris said, looking at the screens. "They won't be able to recover quickly, but they'll send reinforcements." Lana's lips tightened. "Then we'll be ready for them." Just as the Xthar began to regroup, Lana ordered the fleet to fall back. It was a hit-and-run tactic, one that would leave the Xthar with significant losses but keep humanity from being overwhelmed. As they jumped back into human space, Lana felt a sense of victory, but she also knew it was only the beginning. Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. The people were divided. Some saw this as a sign of strength, humanity fighting for its survival. Others feared that it would lead to an all-out war. But Lana knew that war had already come. The galaxy might not see it yet, but humanity had just sent a message. Earth was no longer just a small, isolated planet. They were ready to fight for their future no matter the cost, and the galaxy would never forget it. The galaxy was in chaos. The sudden strike by humanity's forces against the Xthar had sent shockwaves through every corner of space. News spread fast, and no one could ignore the boldness of humanity's actions. The Galactic Council, which had once seen humanity as a new and unpredictable species, now had to deal with an unpredictable force, one that had just delivered a powerful message to the entire galaxy. The HSS Valiant and the rest of humanity's fleet had returned to Earth, space after the attack. Though their mission had been a success, the cost was high. The Xthar would not let this insult go unpunished, and the Council would certainly take a strong stance. Lana Moore sat in the command center of the HSS Valiant, staring at the live feeds from across the galaxy. The situation was deteriorating quickly. The Xthar were preparing for war, their fleets gathering at the borders of human space, while the Galactic Council convened an emergency meeting. The peaceful days of diplomatic negotiations were over. The ship's communications officer, Lieutenant Juno, spoke up. "Captain, we've just received another transmission from the Council." Lana nodded, a tired expression on her face. It had been only a few hours since the last message. She expected nothing new, but the Council's response had to come soon. "Put it through," she said, sitting up straighter in her chair. The holographic screen flickered to life, showing the stern face of Counselor Rekai, the same cold, insectoid figure who had pushed so hard for humanity's concessions in the peace talks. "Captain Moore," Rekai's voice was clipped and emotionless. "You have escalated matters beyond repair. Your unprovoked attack on the Xthar Empire is a violation of our agreements. We demand that you immediately cease hostilities and return to the negotiation table. If you do not comply, we will consider this an act of war against the Galactic Council itself." Lana's grip tightened on the armrest. She had expected harsh words, but this was more than she had anticipated. The Council was warning them, threatening them. To the rest of the galaxy, the attack might seem like an unprovoked act of aggression. But to humanity, it was a defense of their sovereignty. "Counselor," Lana replied, her voice calm but unwavering, "we didn't start this. The Xthar have been manipulating the talks, and the Council turned a blind eye. We won't let our people be sacrificed for the sake of diplomacy. If you want peace, it must be built on truth, not lies." Rekai's antennae twitched. "You misunderstand the situation, Captain. The peace talks were never about truth, they were about balance. We need to find a way to restore that balance, and your actions have jeopardized everything. Lana leaned forward. Balance? Is that what you call it? A peace that favors the Xthar and leaves humanity with nothing? If that's the Council's idea of balance, then humanity rejects it. We are done with this so-called peace. The message cut off and the hologram disappeared, leaving Lana staring at the empty room. The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her shoulders. The Council was not backing down, and neither were the Xthar. War seemed almost inevitable. Now, Captain, we've intercepted a fleet of Xthar warships on the edge of human space, Lieutenant Harris reported from his station. They're heading in our direction and they're not responding to any communications. Lana stood up, her mind already racing with the possibilities. They won't back down either. We need to prepare for what's coming. The human fleet wasn't large enough to take on the Xthar head-to-head, but they didn't need to. Humanity's strength lay in their adaptability, their ability to fight with creativity and determination. They couldn't win a war with sheer force, but they could outmaneuver their enemies. Lana turned to Commander Sato. Get our fleet in position. We'll fight defensively, but we need to create a window for negotiation. If the Council wants us to stop, they'll have to do more than threaten. We need their support now. Sato nodded, turning to issue orders. The ship's crew worked quickly, preparing for a confrontation that they all knew could turn into something much bigger. Hours later, the first Xthar warships appeared on the radar, looming large against the blackness of space. Their massive ships with their jagged angular designs were a sight to behold, and they were coming fast. Lana's heart raced. This was the moment. They couldn't afford to hesitate. The HSS Valiant and the rest of the fleet moved into position, spreading out to form a defensive line around Earth's borders. They wouldn't engage unless provoked, but if the Xthar attacked, they would fight back with everything they had. The Xthar ships slowed as they reached the outer limits of the defensive perimeter. Communications crackled to life, but it was not the voice of Rekai. "Human fleet, you are outmatched," a deep rasping voice said. It was Commander Vashitar, one of the highest-ranking military leaders of the Xthar Empire. "Withdraw now, or we will destroy you." Lana's eyes narrowed. She had faced the Xthar before, but this was different. The stakes were much higher now. "Won't back down," she replied. "Not to the Xthar, not to anyone." The tension was thick. The two fleets hovered on the edge of open conflict, neither side willing to make the first move. Then, as if to break the deadlock, a new transmission came through. It was from the Galactic Council. Lana tapped her communicator, connecting the call. A hologram appeared, this time showing a different face. Supreme Counselor Tehran, an elderly alien with vast experience in galactic diplomacy. He looked tired, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of respect. "Captain Moore," he said, his voice steady, "I have reviewed your actions and the evidence you've provided. It appears the Xthar have betrayed the Council's trust. The peace talks were never meant to be used as a tool for expansion. You were right to stand up for your people." Lana was taken aback. She had expected the Council to condemn her further, not to back her up. You believe us?" Tehran nodded. "The truth is undeniable now, but the situation is still delicate. You've made your point, but we cannot allow open conflict between the Xthar and humanity. I suggest you cease hostilities, and we will hold an emergency session to resolve the issue." Lana's heart skipped a beat. This was the opening she needed. The Council had finally acknowledged the truth. Now it was up to humanity to negotiate peace on their own terms. "Understood, Supreme Counselor. We will hold our position until further instructions," Lana said. The hologram faded and the tension on the bridge eased slightly, but the danger was far from over. The Council's support was crucial, but the Xthar wouldn't be so easily deterred. The battle was only beginning, and the stakes had never been higher. The atmosphere aboard the HSS Valiant was tense. Lana Moore stood in the command center, staring at the holographic displays in front of her. The Xthar fleet was still poised on the edge of human space, but now there was a glimmer of hope. The Galactic Council had finally acknowledged humanity's stance, but the question remained, Would they do enough to prevent full-scale war? The council had promised an emergency session, but Lana knew time was running out. Every minute the fleet stood facing each other in space increased the chances of a misstep. The Xthar were notorious for being unpredictable, and she had no doubt that their patience was thinning. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris said, stepping up beside her, "we've just received another message from the Xthar fleet. They're demanding we leave the area within the next 12 hours or face a full-scale assault." Lana sighed and nodded. "They're trying to force our hand, but we're not going to be intimidated." Harris looked uncertain. "But Captain, if we don't retreat, they'll attack. The council's session isn't until tomorrow. What if—" Lana held up her hand, silencing him. "We stand firm, Lieutenant. We've made our point. We will not back down now." As the hours ticked by, Lana spent every minute making sure her fleet was ready. Commander Sato worked with his officers, coordinating defensive strategies, while the rest of the crew kept a close watch on the approaching Xthar ships. Meanwhile, on Earth, the news was filled with speculation. The people were watching their leaders on the HSS Valiant as heroes, but also with fear. Some felt humanity had already made its stand. Others were terrified of what might happen next. Lana sat in her quarters late into the night trying to clear her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that the council's emergency session would not resolve everything. The Xthar were not a species to back down easily, and the council was divided. There were too many factions, each with its own agenda. The odds were high that the talks would fail. She was snapped out of her thoughts when Harris entered, his face serious. "Captain, we've intercepted a transmission from the council," he said. "It's from Supreme Counselor Turan. He wants to speak to you personally." Lana's heart skipped a beat. Turan had been a key ally, and his support was crucial. Maybe, just maybe, he had good news. She stood and followed Harris to the communication center. As the screen lit up, the familiar face of Turan appeared, looking more exhausted than ever. "Captain Moore," Turan began, his voice steady but laced with concern. "The emergency session has reached a critical point. Some factions in the council are pushing for harsh retaliation against humanity for your actions. But there are also voices advocating for a more balanced approach. I will do everything I can to steer the conversation in your favor." Lana's stomach tightened. "What do you need from us, Supreme Counselor?" Turan hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Your position is strong, but the Xthar are not the only threat here. There are others who stand to gain from this conflict. If war breaks out, it will not be just between humanity and the Xthar. Several powerful factions will jump at the chance to further their own interests." Lana understood immediately. This wasn't just about peace anymore. It was about the balance of power in the galaxy, and if humanity didn't tread carefully, they could find themselves caught in the middle of a galactic war. "I'll do what I can," Lana said, her voice firm. "But if the council won't back us fully, we will defend ourselves no matter what." Turan nodded. "I know. But remember, Captain, if this escalates, we all lose. Humanity's future is on the line. But so is the future of the entire galaxy. Please, don't let pride and fear guide your actions." The message ended, and Lana was left standing in the room, her mind racing. The situation had become even more complicated. Not only did humanity have to face the Xthar, but now the entire galaxy was at risk of plunging into chaos. The following day, the emergency session of the Galactic Council began. Lana stood at the front of the room, her presence commanding attention. The council members had already gathered, and their discussions were heated. It was clear that the issue of humanity's attack on the Xthar was a topic none could avoid. Councillor Reikai was the first to speak. "This is an insult to the Council, an open defiance of peace. Humanity's actions threaten to destabilize everything we've worked for." Lana stepped forward, her voice steady. "It was the Xthar who destabilized the peace, Councillor. They have been using the peace talks as a cover for their expansion. You failed to see that, and now you want to punish us for defending ourselves?" The room fell silent. Many of the smaller species in the room exchanged uneasy glances. Others whispered among themselves. The X-Thar had been allies of the Council for many years, and attacking them was no small matter. But Turan spoke next, his voice commanding. "Councillor Rekai, I've reviewed the evidence. The X-Thar have been manipulating the talks for their own gain. Humanity acted out of necessity, not malice." There was a murmur of surprise as the Council members processed this new information. Turan's support for humanity was unexpected, and it changed the tone of the session. "We need to stop this before it goes any further," Turan continued. "I propose a ceasefire between humanity and the X-Thar, effective immediately. We will establish a neutral zone and both sides will have time to negotiate. But if the X-Thar refuse, the Council will intervene on humanity's behalf." Lana's heart raced. This was the opening she needed. The Council was finally starting to listen. Rekai stood, his expression dark. "You cannot be serious. The X-Thar have already shown their intentions. If we stop them now, we risk losing control of the galaxy." Turan's gaze was sharp. "And if we allow them to continue unchecked, we risk losing everything. The peace you claim to defend is built on lies." The session continued for hours, but Turan's proposal gained momentum. Slowly, more voices in the Council began to support the idea of a ceasefire. The X-Thar were forced to listen, and if they rejected the Council's decision, they would risk alienating the very species that had once supported them. By the end of the session, an agreement was reached. The X-Thar were given an ultimatum: return to the peace talks or face the full might of the Galactic Council. Lana watched the proceedings from her ship, her thoughts racing. It wasn't over yet, but the first real step toward peace had been taken. The next move was up to the X-Thar, and the galaxy would be watching. The uneasy calm after the Council's ceasefire order did not last long. Within hours, the X-Thar Empire's flagship, the Malkar, appeared at the edge of the neutral zone. Its vast, dark hull blocked out distant stars. Captain Lana Moore watched from the bridge of the HSS Valiant, her jaw set. The X-Thar Admiral, Vashitar, hailed them. His deep, echoing voice filled the comms channel. "Human fleet, you dare challenge the might of the X-Thar? Withdraw or be destroyed." Lana pressed a hand to the console, studying the reading. Behind her, Lieutenant Harris leaned forward. "They haven't responded to the Council," he warned. "They're calling our bluff." Lana took a breath. "Not today," she said. "Prepare to engage on my mark." Across human space, fleets from Council member species assembled alongside Earth ships. Raptor-like warriors, crystalline beings, and sleek aqua-breathers all stood ready. The Council's promise of intervention meant reinforcements were coming, but Lana knew those ships might arrive too late. "Target their weapons arrays first," she ordered. "We cripple their guns, then we show the galaxy what humans can do." The Valiant and its allies surged forward. In the void between stars, laser fire and plasma bolts streaked through darkness. The X-Thar flagship responded with gravity pulses designed to shatter lesser hulls, but human ships held firm behind energy shields. Commander Sato guided a squadron of agile fighters. They wove through enemy fire, slipping under the Malkar's massive prow to strike its weapon turrets. Explosions rocked the hull, and for the first time, the X-Thar flagship shuddered. Below decks on the Valiant, Lieutenant Juno monitored damage reports. "We've taken some hits," she said, "but nothing critical. Shields are holding at 80%. "Good," Lana replied. "Keep it that way." She turned back to the view screen. The battle raged, but one thing was clear: humanity would not be pushed aside. Suddenly, an alarm blared. "Incoming fighters, fast movers, small hulls," shouted the tactical officer. A swarm of X-Thar skirmishers darted toward the Valiant. "Evasive maneuvers," Lana commanded. The ship twisted gracefully, sending the fighters past its flanks. Human point defense turrets opened fire, vaporizing the attackers one by one. On the flagship's deck, Sato's squadron finished their run and pulled back. "Weapons down to 50%, he reported. "They're hitting back hard." Lana's eyes narrowed. "Then let's finish this." She pressed another button. "All ships focus fire on the Malkar's bridge. We take out their command, we end their will to fight. Energy beams converged on the Xthar flagship's command tower. The Malkar's shields flickered under the concentrated assault. A final massive blast shattered the tower, sending debris spiraling into space. Inside the tower, Admiral Vashatar roared in fury as alarms blared around him. "They will pay for this," he snarled. But he was already cut off from his fleet, his command link severed. Back on the bridge of the Valiant, Lana watched the flagship slow to adrift. "They're pulling back," Lieutenant Harris observed. "No more fire from the flagship." "Yes," Lana said softly. "They know they lost." She exhaled, letting the tension leave her shoulders. "Secure weapons. Do not fire unless fired upon." The human fleet held its ground. Xthar vessels limped away, their battered hulls trailing smoke. The tide had turned. Moments later, a council vessel appeared alongside the Valiant. Its envoy, a tall, slender alien named Ara, hailed them. "Captain Moore, the council's reinforcements have arrived. The Xthar have received our ultimatum. They will comply or face collective sanctions." Lana allowed herself a small nod. "Thank you, Ambassador. We stood our ground, and now the galaxy stands with us." As the Allied fleets formed a protective screen around human space, Lana reflected on the cost of the battle. Dozens of ships had fallen on both sides, brave crews sacrificed for peace, but their sacrifice was not in vain. The Xthar would no longer threaten human worlds, unchecked. That night, Lana addressed the combined forces via HoloLink. Her image appeared on every bridge and command center. "Today we stood together, not as isolated species, but as one galactic community. You fought with courage and honor. You defended the innocent. And you showed that peace must be earned, not forced." Her words drew applause and cheers. For the first time, humans and aliens celebrated side by side. Behind the scenes, the council moved quickly. Special investigators uncovered evidence that a shadow faction within the council had supported the Xthar's secret plans. They had hoped war would centralize power in their hands. When their plot was exposed, they were removed from office and transparent reforms began. On Earth, celebrations erupted. People danced in the streets, ships streaked across the sky in lights and fireworks. But Lana remained cautious. She knew peace was fragile. In her quarters, Harris joined her as she stared at the galactic map. "We did it," he said quietly. Lana looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "Yes, we did. But now our real work begins. Rebuilding trust, forging genuine peace, and making sure no one ever uses diplomacy as a weapon again." Harris smiled. "With you leading us, I believe we can." Lana turned back to the map, her eyes fixed on the stars. "Humanity will never back down," she said, voice firm. "Not while we have breath in our bodies. We will defend what is right, and we will stand as equals among the stars." And with that promise, the first true step toward a lasting peace began. One built on honesty, respect, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity, for many. The aftermath of battle still hummed through the stars. Wrecked Xthar cruisers drifted among floating debris. Human and allied ships worked side by side, rescuing survivors and healing wounded. Captain Lana Moore stood on the bridge of the HSS Valiant, watching the fleet coordinate relief efforts. She felt both pride and relief, but also a deep weariness. The final step remained: healing the wounds of war and forging a true peace. Below decks, diplomatic envoys from many species gathered in a temporary conference hall hastily constructed. Aboard the Council's flagship, the Arbiter's Voice. Holographic banners of Earth, Kashera, and dozens of other planets flickered overhead. The air was thick with cautious hope. It was here that the Galactic Council would finally admit its errors. Lana entered the hall alongside Supreme Counselor Turan and Ambassador Ahra. The council chamber had changed since the last session. Empty seats showed the removal of the corrupt shadow faction. New faces, chosen for their integrity, filled the gaps. The mood was tense but honest. Every delegate knew the stakes. Either they rebuild trust or the galaxy might fracture forever. Turan took the podium first, His voice echoed in the silent chamber. Friends of the galaxy, we gather at the dawn of a new era. We have seen the cost of false peace. We have watched as diplomacy became a weapon against truth. For this, the Galactic Council owes humanity and all member worlds an apology. Murmurs spread among the delegates. Some species exchanged relieved glances. Others bowed their heads in respect. Lana felt her heart swell. This was the moment she had fought for. Tron continued. We acknowledge our failure to act when the Xthar hid their schemes. We ignored warnings and placed political balance over justice. Those mistakes nearly led to war across the stars. For that, we are deeply sorry. From the back of the chamber, Counselor Reikai rose. His insectile features were calmer now, tempered by defeat and reform. He carried a small datapad in his many-jointed hands. I was wrong to dismiss humanity's evidence. The Xthar's schemes were real. My refusal to see the truth cost lives. I ask forgiveness from Captain Lana Moore, from Earth, and from every world that suffered. A hush fell. Reikai's words carried weight. He had once led the push for concessions to the Xthar. Now he admitted his betrayal of council principles. Lana felt tears sting her eyes, but she swallowed them. Forgiveness was part of moving forward. Then the hall doors opened. A group of Xthar delegates entered, led by Admiral Vashatar himself. His once proud posture was humbled. The scars on his uniform and the bandages on his forelimbs showed the price his people had paid. He spoke in a voice roughened by regret. Humans, counselors, I stand before you to ask for a renewed chance. My empire overstepped boundaries. We used the peace talks as a mask. We betrayed our partners. I bear responsibility. I ask not only for your forgiveness, but for a path back to trust. The chamber stirred. To see a hardened Xthar admit guilt was almost unheard of. Lana stepped forward, her uniform crisp and her bearing calm. She held her voice steady as she addressed Vashatar. Admiral Vashatar, your words take courage. I accept them on behalf of humanity. We fought because we believed in truth and justice. If the Xthar now stand with those values, then let us rebuild together. With those words, the hall erupted in cautious applause. It was not celebration, but relief. The galaxy's greatest powers had finally faced their faults. Now came the hard work of forging a lasting peace. Over the next hours, delegates worked through amendments to the peace accord. They drafted clauses guaranteeing freedom of speech in council chambers, strict oversight of any future negotiations, and joint councils of mixed species to monitor compliance. Humanity won strong protections for its colonies, and even the Xthar agreed to limits on military expansion. The terms were fair but firm, a peace built on mutual respect. As the final treaty text neared completion, Lana found a quiet corner to speak with Counselor Reikai. He looked older now, his exoskeleton dulled by remorse. I never understood humanity, he admitted softly. I saw only newcomers, emotional and reckless. Now I see your strength, your will to stand for what is right. You taught us that. Lana nodded. We're different, yes, but difference can be a source of strength. We learn from each other. That is how we grow. Reikai bowed his head. Thank you, Captain. I hope one day to earn your full trust. Lana smiled. I already do. Nearby, Supreme Counselor Turan joined them. Captain Moore, on behalf of the Council, I invite you to sign as our equal partner. Lana accepted the ornate stylus presented to her. As she signed her name to the new peace accord, the halls outside were filled with cheers. The holographic banners shifted to include the newly reformed council emblem, interlocking rings of many colors, symbolizing unity and diversity. With the treaty signed, the council rose as one. Turan spoke again. Let this be the last time. Diplomacy falters. Let us move forward, united in purpose with humanity as our guiding example of courage and honesty. Below the arbiter's voice, the fleets aligned in formal salute. The human flag rippled beside those of Xthar, Kashera, and many others. Lamps and thrusters glowed in synchronized tribute, a celestial dance celebrating peace. Back on Earth, People watched live holo-transmissions. Sober ceremonies marked the signing, but joy shone in human eyes. Families hugged in streets and plazas. Music floated through cities as bands played new anthems of unity. Children waved flags of many species, unaware of the deep significance, but feeling the hope of a galaxy united. Weeks later, humanity took its seat on the reformed Galactic Council. Lana Moore, now appointed Earth's first permanent counselor, looked out over the council chamber. She saw familiar faces, some human, many alien, working side by side. The scars of war remained, but they were healing. In her first act as counselor, she proposed a new initiative, the Galactic Humanitarian Corps, a mixed-species force dedicated to disaster relief, medical aid, and cultural exchange. It was a symbol of how the galaxy could turn conflict into cooperation. As the chamber voted unanimously, Lana felt a surge of hope. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson, that peace forced is fragile, but peace chosen together is strong. Humanity had withdrawn from talks once, but they had returned to join a new vision, one where every voice mattered. Standing in the crowded council chamber, Lana remembered the red gas giant and the day she withdrew from the old peace talks. She had trusted her instincts then, and it had been the right choice. Now she knew that choice had transformed the fate of billions.